Okay, we were talking about Chris Christie's early political career up to the time where he went on the outs with the Republican Party.
Yeah, that assembly race, which he challenged the incumbents, made him a pariah in his own party. He was cast aside, and his political career pretty much was over at that point. He winds up, through friendship, working for a very prominent attorney in New Jersey who's also a heavyweight in Republican politics, Bill Palatucci. He works for his firm. In 2000, Palatucci and Christie become what they call Pioneer Club members of Bush's campaign finance, President Bush's the second campaign finance team. They raised close to $300,000 for Christie in New Jersey, and they were the go-to guys for Bush for his campaign. By press accounts, somehow Bill Palatucci sends Christie's resume to Karl Rove, who's working for George Bush as an aide and advisor, to become the next U.S. Attorney of New Jersey. When the appointment comes up, lo and behold, Christie is nominated. The nomination is scoured by newspapers such as the Star Ledger and others as being basically a political plum appointment. This saying Christie has no clue as to what a federal prosecutor,
Yeah, you know something, I've mentioned that to people before, and one prevailing attitude among people is, yeah, but that's the way those jobs are.
Well, the U.S. Attorney scandal might prove them right, Mike. But it's frightening, and learning now what I've learned about the justice system and why I'm urging on reforms on it. It's sad and it's tragic, but that's the facts of life.
Okay. Make a note of that, because you have in fact, let's do it now. You have very specific reforms.
Yeah.
It's not too early to mention that.
Yeah. Common sense stuff would be, number one, a prosecutor, when he leaves the office, should be barred from running for public office for a term of 2 or 3 years. And primarily, when the people learn about what happened here, they'll understand why, because you don't want him using prosecutions in his office to further or plumb his nest. You want him to be as objective as he can be on determining whether there is a case against someone or there isn't, and not just whether that case, if he makes or breaks it, is going to make or break him in his political opportunity once he leaves the office. The other thing I would do is make penalties for prosecutors who commit misconduct, sanctions.
Right, that's a problem. You have these guidelines, you have these rules of procedure that they need to follow.
Yeah,
but if they don't,
there's no accountability. At best, a defendant gets his issue reversed, or the position he's taken, he wins on a motion. But for the prosecutor, there's no charge. There's nothing. Just life goes on as normal. Only in very severe cases have the court stepped in. One was the United States Senator from Alaska, Ted Stevens, in D.C. The prosecutors in that case withheld exculpatory evidence. They knew he was innocent, or evidence that they showed he was innocent, they withheld from the jury. It was found out after the trial. The judge lashed into them. They tried to push the investigation into the Justice Department, wing the Office of Public Responsibility to handle it themselves. The judge won't tolerate it.
that's another reform.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
He handled the judge ordered that a special prosecutor look at it. And one of the reforms should be is that there should be an independent review of prosecutorial misconduct by the Office of Inspector General, which is outside of the Justice Department domain where attorney generals and prosecutors are. And Congress has resisted reforms on this measure.
You don't have the members of the same club investigating each other. Right?
Exactly right. Another reform would be that prosecutors who are found to have committed misconduct because of personal or political motivations should be prosecuted, not just let off the hook. The other thing which strongly calls for, because people are saying, well, why aren't these things in place, is you need to have rotating memberships on the judiciary committees of the Senate and the Congress, so that this cozy relationship between those who are overseeing justice and those who are in justice isn't able to exist, and is not able to cement ties where a prosecutor or an attorney general can get things he wants to based on a relationship and not based on what's best for the country.
All right. Augie Torres recently ran a column that has those steps spelled out, and on the website that's going to be a companion to this, I'm going to make sure I put those statements
very
up there.
important. Part of my advocacy background that leads me to point that out.
But the troubling thing is, you can prove, if it comes to a point that you prove that Christie did all these things wrong, there's still no penalty.
No. Well, first of all, the first thing they'll say is that, well, Justice Department, the Office of Public Responsibility, can't investigate employees who are no longer members. So it would have to go to a U.S. Attorney's Office or an Attorney General. All the people in this case are compromised, from the D.C. offices, which may have not been aware of what was actually going on in Hudson, but still signed off on authorization forms allowing money to go into, local campaigns when it shouldn't have. So there's a myriad of conflicts that abound in this.
Actually, there's even without getting into the conflicts of the present people in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the focus largely has been, probably even my focus has been on Christie himself. All right, but it's not just that one corrupt person. He had the equivalent of like a mob family in the U.S. Justice Department, and
yes, he did. Well, let's continue with his history a little bit, because it'll prove your point. He becomes the U.S. attorney sworn in. If you look at a couple of sides, he's a very press-oriented person. He likes a lot of publicity, so he proceeds on a course of public corruption prosecutions. He starts with Treffinger, which was left over from the previous U.S. attorney, and Treffinger is a prominent Republican who Christie didn't like. After that one, the numbers changed drastically. By a 5-to-1 ratio, Christie is publicly targeting and prosecuting predominantly Democrats, key Democrats in the state of New Jersey, Democrats key to statewide races in our state, whether they're U.S. Senate races, whether they're governor's races. It seems that these key Democrats, John Lynch, the Bergen County Democratic chairman, will all get targeted. And they in particularly wind up being targeted and taken out at a time Christie is contemplating running for governor. But even back up then, he gets into this process of making agreements with other non-public corruption cases, where he lets a lot of people off the hook in exchange for them paying a fine and landing a settlement agreement. And what happens when he does that is, number one, it gives him the ability to appoint from the outside a prosecutor or an attorney to represent him, like he did with Herb Stern.